It was just another closing shift at the department store, a monotonous routine of restocking shelves and cleaning up after the daytime chaos. Little did I know that this night would become a true retail horror story etched into my memory forever. The clock on the wall displayed a cruel reminder of time's slow crawl toward midnight. My coworkers and I were eager to finish our tasks and escape the cavernous store, now dimly lit with a flickering, ominous glow. As we neared the toy section, an eerie feeling settled over us, like invisible eyes were watching. Our laughter, usually echoing through the empty aisles, had faded into an uncomfortable silence. The toys lined the shelves, their cheerful faces now appearing sinister under the dim lighting. It started innocently enough. A doll, placed neatly on the shelf, suddenly tumbled to the floor. We exchanged uneasy glances, attributing it to a gust of wind or a misplaced toy. But then it happened again, and again. Toys flew off the shelves, seemingly propelled by an unseen force. The giggles and laughter that once emanated from the dolls now took on a chilling, maniacal tone. We huddled together, trying to rationalize the inexplicable. Maybe it was a prank, or perhaps a mischievous child hiding among the shelves. But as the toys continued their eerie dance, our explanations fell apart like a house of cards. The intercom crackled to life, startling us. A distorted voice filled the store, muttering incomprehensible words that sent shivers down our spines. Panic set in, and we made a dash for the exit, leaving behind our unfinished tasks and the malevolent toys. Outside, the cold night air did little to soothe our frayed nerves. We called the police, explaining our bizarre ordeal, but they found nothing amiss when they arrived. No intruders, no malfunctioning toys, and no evidence of the eerie voice on the intercom. We returned to our jobs reluctantly, each glance at the toy section filled with trepidation. The night pressed on, and nothing more out of the ordinary occurred. But the memory of those possessed toys and the haunting voice would forever linger in our minds. To this day, I can't explain what happened during that closing shift. Was it a malevolent spirit or a mere trick of the mind? I'll never know for sure, but one thing is certain. Retail horror stories are not confined to the pages of fiction, and the unexplainable can creep into the most ordinary of places, turning them into realms of fear and uncertainty. Working the late shift at the department store was never my favorite part of the job. The hum of fluorescent lights and the quietude of empty aisles often left me with an eerie feeling. But on this particular night, that feeling would escalate into something truly terrifying. The clock had just struck midnight, and I was completing the last of my closing duties. My coworker, Alex, and I were in the toy section, tasked with tidying up the disarray left by curious children throughout the day. As we arranged action figures and stacked board games, an unsettling sensation settled over me, a prickling at the back of my neck, a feeling that something was amiss. I glanced at Alex, who seemed equally uneasy, but we brushed it off as mere exhaustion. That's when the giggles began. Soft, eerie laughter, like that of children, echoed through the store. Alex and I exchanged nervous glances, thinking maybe a stray customer's child had been left behind. We searched the aisles, but the store was empty. As we returned to our task, the laughter grew louder, more pronounced, and it seemed to be coming from the dolls on the shelves. I picked up one of them, a cute stuffed bunny with a motion sensor, and it giggled in my hand. But what chilled me to the bone was that its eyes blinked. I dropped the bunny, and Alex's eyes widened in disbelief. We watched in horror as the toys on the shelves came to life, their plastic limbs moving, their eyes blinking and heads turning to follow our every move. The air grew colder, and the hushed whispering of children filled the toy section. We strained to hear the words, but they were unintelligible. It was as if the dolls were trying to communicate something beyond our comprehension. In a panicked frenzy, we rushed to the store's intercom system, intending to call for help. But when we activated it, a voice that was not ours emanated from the speakers. It was a guttural, unnatural sound, reciting words we couldn't understand, but the malevolence in its tone was undeniable. We fled the store, leaving behind the possessed toys and the chilling voice on the intercom. Outside, we called the police, but when they arrived, the store was eerily silent, the toys motionless once more, and the voice on the intercom silent. We returned to work the following day, but the memory of that night haunted us. We shared our story with no one, fearing they would think us mad. But we knew what we had experienced, the toys that had come to life, the eerie laughter, and the haunting voice. To this day, I can't explain the true horror of that retail shift, but I'll never forget the feeling of being watched by those unblinking toy eyes, or the laughter that echoed through the aisles. The ordinary had transformed into the realm of the supernatural, and I was forever changed by the experience. It was another typical evening at the small retail store where I worked. The sun had set, and the fluorescent lights flickered to life, casting a harsh, unforgiving glow on the merchandise. My coworkers and I were busy with the usual closing duties, oblivious to the impending horror that would soon unfold. As the minutes ticked away, the store grew emptier, the last-minute shoppers vanishing into the night. It was just my colleague Sarah and me left to finish closing up. We moved with a practiced efficiency, tidying shelves and restocking merchandise. As we approached the children's toy section, I felt an odd sensation, a prickling at the back of my neck, a feeling of being watched. I glanced around, but the store was deserted, save for Sarah and me. I shrugged it off as fatigue and focused on my tasks. That's when it happened. A soft, eerie giggle, like a child's laughter, echoed through the store. Sarah and I exchanged puzzled glances, thinking it was a stray customer's child who had somehow eluded our notice. We moved closer to the source of the sound, the rows of dolls and action figures. They stood in their boxes, their plastic eyes staring blankly ahead. I picked up one of the dolls, and it giggled again, but this time, its eyes blinked. I gasped, dropping the doll as if it had burned me. Sarah's eyes widened, mirroring my disbelief. We watched in horror as the dolls on the shelves began to move, their plastic limbs twitching, their heads turning to follow our every move. The air grew colder, and a hushed whispering filled the toy section. We couldn't discern the words, but the voices sounded like those of children. The dolls' laughter became more pronounced, more sinister, as if they were mocking our fear. In a panic, we hurried to the store's intercom system to call for help, but the voice that emanated from the speakers was not ours. It was a guttural, unnatural sound, reciting a string of incomprehensible words that sent a chill down our spines. We fled the store, leaving behind the possessed toys and the chilling voice on the intercom. Outside, we called the police, but when they arrived, the store was empty, the toys motionless once more, and the voice on the intercom silenced. We returned to our jobs the next day, but the experience had left an indelible mark on us. We never spoke of that night to anyone, fearing they would dismiss our tale as madness. But I know what I saw and heard, the toys that came to life, the eerie laughter, and the haunting voice. To this day, I can't explain the true horror that unfolded during that closing shift, but one thing is certain. There are mysteries lurking in the most ordinary of places, and the retail store that I once considered mundane had become a realm of nightmares. It was another typical evening at the department store where I worked, or so I thought. Little did I know that the mundane routine of restocking shelves and organizing displays would take a sinister turn, transforming into a true retail horror story. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly toward closing time. My coworker, Sarah, and I were the last ones left, tasked with the unenviable duty of tidying up the toy section. The store was eerily quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights casting long, menacing shadows on the floor. As we worked diligently, an unshakable feeling of unease settled over us, like invisible eyes were watching our every move. We exchanged nervous glances, but dismissed our apprehension as mere fatigue. That's when it began. A soft, eerie giggle, like that of a child, echoed through the store. Sarah and I froze in our tracks, trying to pinpoint the source. It couldn't be a child. The store was deserted, devoid of customers or coworkers. We moved cautiously toward the dolls and action figures on the shelves, their plastic faces now bearing a malevolent grin. I picked up one of the dolls, and it giggled again, but this time, its eyes blinked. Impossible for an inanimate toy. Dread washed over us as we watched the toys come to life. Plastic limbs twitched, and their heads turned to follow our every move. The air grew colder, and whispers filled the toy section. Whispers that sounded like the voices of children, though we couldn't make out the words. In a panic, we rushed to the store's intercom system, intending to call for help. But when we activated it, a voice that was not ours emanated from the speakers. It was a guttural, unnatural sound, reciting a string of incomprehensible words that sent shivers down our spines. We fled the store, leaving behind the possessed toys and the haunting voice on the intercom. Outside, we called the police, who arrived promptly. However, when they entered the store, it was as though the eerie events had never occurred. The toys lay dormant, the whispers silenced, and the voice on the intercom gone. We returned to work the next day, but the experience had left an indelible mark on us. We spoke of it to no one, fearing they would dismiss our tale as madness. But I know what I saw and heard. The toys that came to life, the eerie laughter, and the haunting voice. To this day, I cannot explain the true horror that unfolded during that closing shift. The ordinary retail store had become a nightmarish realm where toys defied logic and the inexplicable reigned supreme.